I invite you to close your eyes and imagine a young child standing at the edge of a pond in the springtime. In your mind's eye, perhaps you imagine seeing and hearing the animals that live in this place. But where there was once a familiar chorus of birdsong that filled the air, now there is only silence. And where the shoreline was once alive with hopping toads, there's now only stillness. This emptiness feels heavy, like something precious has been lost. And perhaps as I describe this, you're imagining your own favorite pond or a cherished family fishing spot, a place that once felt like magic for you. This experience can make us feel small, helpless, and even resigned in the face of environmental loss. But today I want to share a different story with you, a story of hope, resilience, and the incredible power of community. For me, that magical place that I pictured brings me back to early childhood, to a creek tucked in the woods near a river where my parents would spend the day fishing. There was the bubbling brook, the fresh air, the towering trees, and the giant boulders scattered throughout like stepping stones. I would splash around barefoot, soaking wet, rummaging through the creek in search of salamanders. And each time I would find one, I would smile, boop its snoot, and set it free. That creek was the first time that I felt the thrill of discovering something wild and beautiful. I was about 10 years old when I first read that amphibians were vanishing all over the world. My favorite animals were in trouble. And that early sense of connection that I'd experienced at the creek turned into a commitment. I knew that I wanted to help them. So I pursued biology in school, seeking out every opportunity along the way to help in their conservation. And one of those early opportunities came during a warm summer evening in Indiana. The air was alive with the sounds of dusk. Earlier that year, I had enrolled in an amphibian conservation course, and I'd been trying to memorize all of the mating calls of every frog and toad in the area. I'm aware that that is a weird hobby. But there I was, navigating these backcountry roads, ears primed for every chirp, trill, and croak. And when I would hear a chorus like this, I would stop the car and begin to take notes. I wasn't a professional scientist. I was just a volunteer relying on a worn set of recordings to verify each call that I heard. Back then, I didn't fully understand how important those data were. Amphibians are much more than just residents of ponds and marshes. They're indicators of environmental health. Because of their sensitivity to changes in habitat quality, their absence can reveal signs of early ecosystem decline. So each note that I documented was a sign of life. Each note was a smaller one in that larger symphony of that ecosystem. So those data that I collected, and so many others, became part of a much bigger picture, helping scientists to monitor when an ecosystem is thriving and when it's at risk. So in that field in Indiana, surrounded by the beautiful and deafening chorus of the crickets and the frogs and the toads, I realized that maybe even my small actions could make a real difference. Communities everywhere are feeling the strain on local ecosystems. Whether it's a shrinking riverbed, declining bird populations, or fewer native plants blooming in the spring, these changes are signals, signs that our ecosystems are under pressure, and often from causes that seem vast and out of reach, like climate change or pollution. But we don't have to solve all of the planet's problems at once. In fact, most of conservation is local, with small collective actions rippling outward in a powerful way. For example, local projects that restore native plant habitats can support pollinators like bees and butterflies, which are vital for nearby farms and gardens. People just like you are stepping up to fill this gap through something called community science. You may have also heard this referred to as citizen science. And this is where people of all ages and backgrounds collect data, monitor species, and actively engage in conservation efforts. And the impact they're having is nothing short of extraordinary. Take the Christmas bird count, for example, which began over 100 years ago. This is the longest standing community science project in the world. Tens of thousands of volunteers count birds in their local areas annually. We have one right here in Grand Junction. This small act has led to one of the most comprehensive databases on bird populations, helping scientists to understand migration patterns and monitor shifts in ecosystems due to climate change. As an amphibian ecologist, I had spent years trying to understand the impacts of a non-native species on our native wildlife. The American bullfrog, pictured here, has been introduced to much of the western United States, including western Colorado. And we suspect that they cause damage by eating our native wildlife and carrying amphibian diseases. One solution to this problem is removal of the non-native bullfrog from our wetlands. But this problem was vast, and I often felt the limits of what I could accomplish alone. So I decided to try something different, inviting the community to help. And when I was trying to think of an incentive that might get people to come out on a Friday night and help me collect a bunch of bullfrogs, I thought, local craft beer might do the job. And I wasn't wrong, and that is how Bullfrogs for Beers was born. Local breweries right here in Grand Junction, like Trail Life and Base Camp, generously donated vouchers to support this unique conservation effort. But Bullfrogs for Beers became something far greater than I ever imagined, a way for our community to learn about our local amphibians, connect with nature, and make impacts in conservation that were meaningful. I quickly realized that a lot of others were interested in being a part of this. Families, Girl Scout troops, state and federal employees in the area, and so many others wanted to be a part of removing these bullfrogs and helping me to collect valuable data. So to meet this rising enthusiasm, I reached out to other business owners, and soon our local ice cream parlor, Graff Dairy, and our downtown pizza place, Pablo's Pizza, joined in, offering rewards of their own for volunteers. There is a quote that really resonates with me by Jennifer Shirk, who is a leading advocate and expert in the field of community science. And it says, "Community science offers the power of science to everyone and offers the power of everyone to science." Volunteers in Western Colorado have collected hundreds of data points and removed hundreds of bullfrogs from our wetlands since 2021, helping me to confirm that they do in fact eat our native wildlife and they're carrying amphibian diseases. Their contributions scientifically inform the decisions made to preserve our public lands, really offering the power of science to everyone. And I also really love the other part of that quote, that community science offers the power of everyone to science. And this was really brought to life for me right here in Grand Junction this past summer at one of the Bullfrogs for Beers events, in a moment that really shifted my perspective on the power of community. One volunteer was a 9-year-old girl named Emma, and she was knee-deep in pond scum with her dad and her brother, searching for these bullfrogs under the stars. And after a few moments, I saw her headlamp bobbing toward me at the research station, and I knew she had caught a bullfrog, but I was not prepared for what she had brought me. In her small gloved hands, she held a bullfrog, covered in severe symptoms of a disease that I recognized immediately, ranavirus. This virus, while harmless to humans, can devastate amphibian populations, leading to mass die-offs. I would like to share an image of this animal with you to demonstrate the significance of Emma's finding, but it may be difficult for some to see, so I invite you to momentarily close your eyes or look away. The image is no longer on the screen. Those skin lesions go down to the skeletal muscle, often to the bone, and this disease also causes internal organ damage. This animal was undoubtedly in a lot of pain. As an amphibian scientist with over 20 years of experience, I have never seen clinical signs of ranavirus in the wild before that moment. Thanks to Emma's discovery, we were able to report this to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which helps agencies and scientists to make more informed decisions about how to protect our local amphibians. And perhaps more importantly, Emma left the event that evening not just as a volunteer, but as a steward of her environment, understanding that her actions truly matter. This experience reminded me of the tremendous impact that volunteer scientists can have. Through their contributions, we can gather data and make discoveries that may otherwise have gone unseen. One person can make a difference. One evening in the field, one observation, one moment of curiosity. These small actions add up. Emma's discovery taught me firsthand how powerful a single volunteer can be. And this isn't an isolated story. Community science projects across the world are making huge strides in conservation, such as the recovery for the monarch butterflies, whose populations were sharply declining due to habitat loss. Thousands of volunteers began to track their migration patterns using an app called Monarch Watch. And this allowed scientists to identify regions for habitat restoration along their migration route, which is an impressive 2,500 miles long. And now we're seeing a steady increase in their numbers. So what does this mean for you? It means that you don't have to wait for someone else to save your favorite animal or plant or ecosystem. You can start right now, right where you are. There are conservation projects happening all around you that could use your help, and they range from rivers to mountains, plants to pikas, and everything in between. In the face of today's environmental crises, it's easy to feel small, to feel like one person can't possibly make a difference. But I hope that you remember the impact that Emma had, and that every great movement in history began with people coming together for a common cause, and conservation is no different. As we face the challenges ahead, we need every hand, every heart, and every voice. The earth is not asking for perfection, it's asking for participation. Together we can protect the places that we love. Maybe it's that pond that you visualized earlier, or another place that you hold dear and hope to share someday with the younger generation. Let's be the stewards that our planet needs. One bullfrog, one monarch, one data point at a time. Thank you.